Revelation 3505. From the 3rd and 4th of August 1945. Influence of immature souls who died early. Numerous souls dwell close to earth who are secluded without realization of the eternal deity, who entered the kingdom of the beyond blindly in spirit and, still unconscious of their miserable state, stay close to people who were around them on earth. And these souls, through their desires and urges, often drive people to actions and speeches which correspond to their will, that is, they transfer their thinking to people who offer them no resistance, who are of the same spirit and therefore receptive to the influence of those souls. The rapid departure from earth, often in the midst of life through the influence of demonic forces, to which countless people fall victim, transfers the still immature souls from the state of strength into a state of complete powerlessness. They feel that they can no longer accomplish anything of their own will and therefore seek to transfer their will to living people in order to still have an effect through them, in order to determine them to carry out their will. And this unfavorable influence from the spiritual kingdom of darkness has a particularly detrimental effect on earth because it increases the number of deceased every day and deprives many people of the opportunity to reach their state of maturity on earth. The earth is currently surrounded by dark figures who even try to deny the forces of light access to earth and succeed where people are indifferent towards the spiritual. The immature souls still strive for the same as on earth, and they transfer their desire to people who have the same thoughts, the same desires and the same state of maturity. And these are willing executors of what they are mentally whispered to. An increased mortality, which is unnatural, thus occurring as a result of human hatred and human lack of love, will also increase the darkness in the spheres next to the earth. For people have not yet evaluated their earthly life, they cannot yet record the spiritual successes, they are mostly easygoing and belong to the world, and their desire for bodily death is correspondingly, as soon as particularly difficult living conditions do not make them realize the worthlessness of it in the last hour, and their thinking still changes before the entrance into the spiritual kingdom. Then the soul will not be surrounded by deepest darkness but will see rays of light flashing now and then, which it follows and soon comes into brighter surroundings. But then its desire no longer applies exclusively to earthly matter, it easily separates itself from earth and its former surroundings and finds a substitute in the spiritual kingdom which seems more valuable to it. But immature souls cannot rise into these spheres, they are held to earth as if by chains and are also always close to their relatives or like-minded people on earth. And their spiritual state will hardly lift as long as forces from the beyond exert their influence. And their ignorance is not suitable to have an enlightening effect on people, moreover, they make it more difficult for the beings of light to gain access to them. And only the serious will of the human being himself clears the way for the beings of light. And therefore earthly chaos, initiated by human will and demanding many sacrifices, also results in a spiritual decline, for even after a person's death his thoughts are still active. And people should protect themselves from the influence of immature, prematurely deceased people by praying for them and asking for protection through the beings of light, for right thinking and God's grace and strength. Then the efforts of the dark spiritual forces will be fruitless, they will not be heard by people and cannot cause spiritual harm. For again, it is the human being's own will whether he strives for good in order to be in contact with good forces or carelessly abandons himself to the pressing thoughts of evil forces. The human being can protect himself, but he must have the will to do so and consequently abhor evil thoughts and actions. He has to walk a path himself which corresponds to God's commandments. Then all influence from the spiritual kingdom exerted by lower forces will be ineffective. For rays of light penetrate everywhere where only light is desired, where good is striven for and spiritual progress is longed for. There the beings of light are constantly active and they chase away all dark figures around people, for their power is great as soon as the human being grants them this power through his will. Amen.